Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, a regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me on the desk for Cybersecurity Awareness Month is Richard Seewald, founder and managing partner at Evolution Equity Partners, and Alex Yampolskiy, co-founder and CEO at SecurityScorecard. We're here to discuss public and private cybersecurity investment themes, and then also key themes to watch in the space overall. It is great to have the both of you back with us. Welcome back to Trade Talks. Before we get into that, Richard, explain to us Evolution Equity Partners, where you sit within the cyberspace.
Hey, Jill. First of all, thank you very much for having us back at Nasdaq Trade Talks. It's always a pleasure to be here in Times Square. Beautiful visibility on the crossroads of the world. Evolution Equity Partners is a growth and early growth stage investor focused entirely on the cybersecurity space. So we raised $1.1 billion in our most recent fund, and we invest anywhere from $5 million to $150 million in disruptive companies that are market leaders in the cybersecurity space. Multi-stage, so we go early growth, later stage, and we think that diversification provides investors access to one of the most exciting categories in software today. And actually, when you look at what you see in the public markets, really the action is in the private markets with the number of companies that we see.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. Alex, give us some background on SecurityScorecard.
Sure. So SecurityScorecard does cybersecurity ratings. Just like you have credit scores, we pioneered the industry to measure and quantify risk, and we were lucky to partner with Richard and Evolution Equity 10 years ago when we were starting the company in 2014. But we pioneered the space, which is now used by over 3,000 customers worldwide. 70% of the Fortune 100 uses our ratings to hold their suppliers accountable, to report to the board, to make insurance underwriting decisions. We changed and transformed how companies measure and communicate risk.
What are some of the higher level metrics that you look at when analyzing a company?
Sure. So we actually gather information from all over the world. So that gives us a lot of insights into positive and negative trends that happen all over the world. We look across 10 categories of risk, including malware infections. How many malware infections are beaconing outside of the company infrastructure? What is the level of their application security, network security? How diligent are they in patching the vulnerabilities that the software manufacturers released? So we really form a holistic view of risk, and we map it to various compliance frameworks like NIST, MITRE, ISO 27000. So we really give you this whole holistic 360 view of risk.
Yeah, which is helpful. At least there's a way to quantify it, because it can be very arbitrary, very subjective. Let's talk about the public and private market space. You made the point that a lot of the action is in the private space. Is it because there's a limited amount of public cyber companies?
Yeah, I think that's one thing. When you look at the publicly listed universe, there's about a dozen companies that are operating, all of them growing sub 20%. When you look at the private markets, the growth there ranges from 30 to 100 to 200 to 300% growth year on year. So when investors seek exposure to this all-important category, the private markets really allow that access and diversification. And our fund facilitates that. And we see front row and center the dynamic nature of disruptive companies in the cybersecurity space that are using machine learning and AI, that are using automation, that are defending and protecting the most important aspects of our society.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of those key themes in cybersecurity in 2024. And with the technology evolving as quick as it has, this conversation could look very different even 6 months from now. And while good actors are leveraging AI, machine learning, these predictive technologies, so are the bad actors, and they're pretty well funded too.
Absolutely. AI can benefit both attackers and defenders. For the defenders, for the good guys, we used to have no data. Now we're sitting on so much data that we're drowning in it, and we can't find a needle in a haystack. So having AI as a co-pilot, where a chief security officer can feed all this information into an AI algorithm, and the AI algorithm tells you, here are the 3 things you need to consider. Not 100, but just 3. It really helps with prioritization. For the attackers, though, they're ahead of a game to leverage AI. They're using deepfakes to emulate the voice, the lookalike. For example, one of my employees working for me, because we're a prominent cybersecurity company, received a message and said, hey, it's Alex, can you jump on a Zoom call And so the attacker actually cloned my voice and my image to create a deepfake to sound like me, and then get somebody to click on a link. We've not seen this type of attacks 5 years ago, but now they're possible.
I mean, phishing is certainly very different than it was in 2019, but see, that's concerning, and it's relevant now because we are coming into, national election is just mere weeks away. Not only thinking about how it relates specific to this election cycle, it's a national security issue, and we're not hearing much in terms of policy around that.
Absolutely right, Jill. I think, neither presidential candidate has raised that issue as part of their policy. And some of that is understood in terms of an election and sort of things that you want to focus on that are, relevant to the voters. But I think what we do need to look at are how we look at machine learning and AI, how regulation is involved in that, how our organizations defend and protect and integrate products that enable that attack surface to, in some ways, mitigate the risk that's out there. Look, cybersecurity is an asymmetric warfare dynamic, and the asymmetry has all of a sudden skewed, where the attacker can deploy cheaper, faster, more effective attacks on organizations. And that attack surface that large language models and machine learning and AI have created just expand that attack surface. Essentially, the playground for attackers has increased. And I think we need to focus on making sure that our organizations have best-of-breed technology to defend and protect against that.
And Alex, that's a great point that Richard brings up, because just think about the enterprise evolution over the past 5 to 6 years, that massive migration to cloud. Then we have the pandemic. Now we have a hybrid working environment. By the way, Gen AI is, part of every conversation now. So the vulnerabilities have just expanded in, a few short years.
Third-party risk is the big epidemic, and attackers are breaking into suppliers and third-party partners and then using them as a weak link to get into the rest of a critical infrastructure. We've done research at SecurityScorecard, and we've diagnosed that 90% of the global attack surface, so 90% of the products discoverable out there, are built by about 50 companies. So that's a very small number of companies making a software that's running most of the world. If one of these companies puts a vulnerability in a code by accident, and they get compromised, the attackers can then go break into tens and tens of thousands of other companies. And so this third-party risk and lack of visibility, lack of insight into how diligent are your partners, M&A targets, investment targets, really creates a lot of exponential complexity in today's world.
Yeah, and that's another great point when you think, are there too many vendors these days? Do you expect more M&A? All those questions you'd expect to be asked. Perhaps redundancies need to be part of that calculus as well, where maybe there aren't enough companies, right?
I think it's a great point. I think when you think of the market, systemic risk today is a function of the risk concentration in a limited amount of vendors. And that thesis around single agent, single pane of glass, while an effective business model may not be the optimal use case for chief security officers around the world who are looking for best of breed to combine with a scalable platform. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. Certainly chief security officers are now, and to the benefit of our portfolio companies, looking at best of breed categories and dissecting it one by one, while still partnering with the larger platforms, but then integrating best of breed into that. I think that's what you're going to see in the future. And actually the platforms that enable that will win. I think they have an advantage if they do that. Closed infrastructure, it challenges that and arguably creates more systemic risk than we need in the market.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one size fits all solution, it almost sounds impossible in a way when you have different size companies, small, medium, large, across multiple verticals. Everyone's risk tolerance is different, right? And every industry is regulated in different ways. It would be kind of hard to put it in this one box without being able to think about different areas. There's different areas and companies that are vulnerable than others.
Yeah, 100%. Just to add on to Richard's point and your question about are there too many vendors? There are about 8,000 to 9,000 vendors. So if you divide 9,000 by 365 days, it would take 24 years for an average chief security officer to get a demo from each one of them. The reason why there's so many vendors is because there were a lot of unsophisticated investors who don't understand security, who overfunded the category, right? So you have a lot of copycats and not really scalable companies. unlike, by the way, Evolution Equity, who deeply understands security and enterprise software space, so they invest into the best of breed companies. So there needs to be really more investment and innovation into best of breed companies, not just more of random security solutions, but really top investors, top teams, thinking about the top problems, and that's what's going to make the world safer.
Weren't there only like 4,000 or 5,000 only cybersecurity companies just a few years
Almost
ago? I mean,
twice,
that's nearly
twice as
doubling
much.
the size, right? So Richard, when you think about investments, whether it's on the public or private side, what areas are most attractive or that you have the most confidence in?
So look, we doubled and tripled down on Scorecard over the years because that third-party risk threat we saw looming a few years ago, and that has come to being a significant risk in our environment today. So SecurityScorecard is a great example of a company we invested in early, seed stage, and then we doubled, tripled, quadrupled down across their growth stage rounds. More recently, we invested in a company called Torque, hyperautomation, focused on automating the security operations center, and automating that to enable better ROI for companies, but also better detection and response capabilities. Look out for that company. That company is changing the game when it comes to automating the cybersecurity stack. We're also invested in a company called Halcyon that delivers an endpoint solution for ransomware and is excellent at being able to detect and then also respond to ransomware attacks. Look out for focused endpoint security players that challenge and do a better job than some of the generalist EDRs out there.
So it looks like response technologies are what you're favoring.
I'd say detection and response generally.
Right.
I'd say on the automation side, that's enabling a more effective and efficient detection and response in the SOC process, and that was Torque. I'd say another area, Protect AI. Protect AI is a company that focuses entirely on protecting the machine learning and AI development ecosystem. Developers and builders are building more algorithms than ever that are based on machine learning and AI. So protecting that environment. Once it's in production, protecting the supply chain. And then later on, being able to pen test large language models and that ecosystem provides peace of mind for machine learning and AI capable companies. And that's everybody out there today.
Right.
So those categories have been salient, relevant, and really have dominated the growth trajectory in what we've seen in the cybersecurity space over the last 12 months.
I mean, Alex, it makes you wonder, how does CISO sleep at night? Especially if you're a multinational company, right? And you're operating in multiple jurisdictions. I don't think I'd sleep.
So I'm a former CISO myself,
Right.
and I did not sleep very well. But the job of a CISO became so complicated because you have to worry about regulations and policies. Then your budgets, you need to be efficient with your budget. Then you have so many vendors knocking on your door and you don't know which one to trust. And then furthermore, the attacks really exponentially magnified. So a lot of the CIOs and CISOs I speak to, they're back to focusing on the basics. They want to buy from a best of breed vendors. It's not always bigger companies. They actually want to buy the best of class solutions. They don't want to buy all their solutions from a single vendor. They want to diversify their portfolio. Number two, they need tools to quantify risk and to report to the board.
Yep.
What you don't measure, you don't improve. So the quantification of risk is important. And then CISOs are really increasingly talking about three key pain points when I talk to them. Number one is cloud security. Number two, identity management. And number three, third-party risk.
Yeah, you and I have spoken about this before, being able to quantify what this is, whether it's in terms of what SecurityScorecard does by measuring companies' cyber preparedness, but being able to go to the CFO or to senior leadership or to the board and quantify, here's our intangible risk, here's our tangible risk, are we investing in the right areas, and are there problems that we need to solve, not just simply throwing money at the tech stack and then you don't even utilize,
Yeah, it seems crazy that you would go to a doctor, the doctor would just look at you and say, hey, I believe you should get this pill, this pill, this pill, without doing blood work, without taking any of your vitals. But this has been happening too much in the cybersecurity space, but it's changing.
Yeah.
There's so many innovative solutions and innovative CISOs who want to improve. And I do think this collaboration between top investors, the private sector, and the community of CISOs is really what's going to lead to the best results.
Do you think there are enough people out there with the skill set to effectively execute on cyber? I mean, every company in the world, every vertical requires a cyber strategy?
I mean, there's a real shortage
Yeah, I mean, even
of
here,
qualified people. And so I think it's a big, by the way, I think it's a really big opportunity to change curriculum in schools.
Yes.
Because I'm looking at my two kids. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. And I'm looking, for example, at Maya, and she wants to be a doctor or a musician. I'm like, Maya, why not cybersecurity? She's like, well, I don't know enough women in cybersecurity. Like, we need to change that perception to make cybersecurity, create more role models, to start teaching it in school, to start teaching the core skills at school. And I really think that's a great opportunity for us to upskill the population, because the shortage of skills for AI, for cybersecurity, is only going to continue to increase. So we need to go back to basics.
Well, you have to have her watch this show, because for Cybersecurity Month, I mean, I think we actually had more women on the show than we did men, and it's something that we report on all year long. It's one of our key verticals. That's what you need to find, an investment where they're focusing specifically on, rewriting the American curriculum.
And I think Evolution donated and supported
we
women
do.
who
Yeah, so
grow.
tell us about the work you're doing.
Yeah, we support organizations that actually put to work money to develop curriculum and promote opportunities in the cybersecurity space for women. Women founders, women technologists, but women founders as well. I think, it's one thing to kind of be engaged in the cybersecurity space, and then second, to start businesses and then create the role model, the example for girls and women to enter this category. So we've initiated this a process with an organization that really is global in nature and that facilitates education and a pathway to success for women who see an opportunity in cyber but don't really know how to navigate those uncharted waters to get into a role. That's extremely important.
Well, I mean, by the way, you don't have to be a comp sci or engineering major, right? Think about the legal function, the risk management side, the accounting side. I mean, everything when it comes to marketing, communications, and data analysis and so forth. Cyber touches every piece of the enterprise, so it's not like you have to be pigeonholed in a STEM discipline, if you will.
Job stability, if you're looking at cyber, it's going to bring you a stable role, an exciting role. And I think if you have that mission inside of you to kind of look at our world and say software is the soft underbelly of our society, and everything runs on it, our elections, our social media, our schools, our government, and defending and protecting that aspect of our society is mission critical. It'll become more mission critical as time goes on. It already is, but it'll become more apparent. Being involved in that industry is just an excellent way to think about a career, and I think these organizations that are enabling that pathway for women and also diverse candidates for jobs like that, extremely important. We've seen more and more, so there is progress, but there needs to be more progress, and I think over the next couple of years we'll see that.
All right, we'll end it on a positive note. Appreciate both of your insights. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.